Hello everyone, my name is Alina. I hold a master level degree in linguistics and I've been preparing students for IELTS for 11 years now. And in this tutorial, you will be able to check your vocabulary for IELTS. The words tested in this tutorial are the words that advanced learners are expected to know. These words are very frequent on the listening as well as the reading parts on IELTS, and an advanced learner or a Band 7 test taker would also be expected to be able to use them on the speaking and writing when necessary. This test is in several parts because of the sheer volume of the vocabulary that needs to be tested. This is the first part of this test. For other parts, please check the description box below. First, you will hear the task. There are 5 tasks in this part of the test. Once you hear the task, you will be given some time to come up with the correct answer. If you need extra time to think, pause the video when you are prompted to do so. After that, you will hear the correct answer with the explanation of the vocabulary. Now, let's start with the first task. In the first task, you need to paraphrase the phrases in bold using the words nouns, in our case, from the box. And the nouns that we have in the box are a sibling. Sometimes you may need a plural of these nouns, so a sibling or siblings, a spouse or spouses, a client or clients, a colleague or colleagues, and an employer or employers. So sentence number 1. My brothers and sisters are very supportive. Now take your time. Pause the video if you need more time. So here you need to find a word which means the same as brothers and sisters, and to rewrite the sentence using this word from the box. Pause the video now if you need extra time to come up with the correct answer. And the correct answer is siblings. Your brothers and sisters are your siblings. Sibling is a brother or a sister. Very good word and very frequently used on IELTS. You may also be, you actually have to also use it on the speaking part, especially when you are talking about your family, about your brothers and sisters. And a very common word also, as well as on writing part, reading part, listening part of the exam, a collocation is sibling rivalry. Is a competition between brothers and sisters. Try to remember it. Sibling rivalry, competition between brothers and sisters. Sibling rivalry. For example, there was a lot of sibling rivalry between Peter and his brothers, or there was great sibling rivalry between Peter and his brothers. Now let's move on to the next sentence. Sentence number 2. The people I work with are very tolerant. Now you need to find a synonym, which means the same as the people I work with, and rewrite the sentence. Pause the video if you need more time to come up with the answer. And people you work with are your colleagues. So my colleagues are very tolerant, are very open-minded, right? So my colleagues are very tolerant, are very open-minded. Sentence number 3. Mr. Black has been using our services for 5 years. So you need to find a word which means the same as a person who has been using our services. Now pause the video if you need extra time. And the person who uses your services is your client. So Mr. Black has been our client for 5 years. Now let's move on to the next sentence. Sentence number 4. Communication is the key to understanding a person you are married to. Now pause the video if you need extra time to think. And a person you are married to is your spouse. So a spouse is a husband or a wife. A husband or a wife is a spouse. So communication is the key to understanding your spouse. And the last sentence in this task, sentence number 5. We need a reference from the person you work for. So you need to find a word which means the same as the person you work for. Pause the video if you need extra time to think. And the person you work for is your employer. And you are, in this case, an employee. So we need a reference from your employer. So this was the easiest task in this test. Now let's move on to the second task, which is very similar to the first one, but a bit more challenging. In this task, you need to again rewrite the sentences, replacing the phrases in bold with a suitable adjective from the box. And the adjectives that we have are idealistic, conventional, flexible, vulnerable, and tolerant. Now let's start. Sentence number 1. Some people believe that I have very strong ideals. Pause the video if you need more time. And a person who has very strong ideals is an idealistic person. So many people believe that I am idealistic. Sentence number 2. A vast majority of people in my country follow the usual practices and traditions. Now, pause the video if you need extra time to think. And people who follow the usual practices and traditions are conventional or traditional people. Conventional. This is what conventional means. Conventional, right? So our sentence would be a vast majority of people in our country are conventional. In my country are conventional. Conventional is, again, a very frequently used word. It's a synonym to traditional, and it collocates very well with beliefs, conventional beliefs, attitudes, conventional attitudes, clothes, conventional clothes, even medicine, conventional medicine, traditional medicine, conventional farming, you can also say conventional attitudes, are all very common collocations, and it would be perfect if you remember and use this word in your speech, conventional instead of traditional. So sentence number 3. The scheme will help charities that work with weak and unprotected adults. Now, pause the video if you need more time. Weak and unprotected adults are vulnerable adults. Vulnerable. Vulnerable means weak and unprotected. So our sentence should be, this scheme will help charities that work with vulnerable adults. Vulnerable adults. Again, very good word, vulnerable. Now let's move on to the next sentence. The current government is even less willing to accept behavior and beliefs which are different from their own. Now pause the video if you need extra time to think. And if you are not willing to accept beliefs, attitudes, and behavior which is different from your own, then you are intolerant, or you can say not tolerant or intolerant, right? So we can either say here the current government is even less tolerant, or the current government is even less tolerant of dissent, if you want to make it a bit more complex, or the current government is even more intolerant, or the current government is even more intolerant of dissent. Now, and the last sentence in this task, how can we encourage employees to adapt more easily to change? Pause the video if you need extra time, and if you're able to adapt easily to a change or any change in situation, any change in circumstances, you are flexible. So flexible means able to change or to be changed according to the circumstances. And it's a very common collocation in, for example, flexible hours or flexible schedule. I have a very flexible schedule, or I work flexible hours. You can also use it with attitudes. For example, they have very flexible attitudes. You can also use it in the phrase to be flexible about. For example, I can say, this allows companies to be more flexible about siting their operations. Or this allows people to be more flexible about choosing where to live or about choosing their place of living. Now let's move to task number 3, which is even more challenging than the second task. In this task, you will hear several recommendations of a doctor. For each recommendation, you need to identify a condition that this recommendation is given for. The vocabulary that you will hear in this task is very common in the reading as well as the listening section. It actually mimics one of the listening exams that I've seen just a couple of weeks ago. So it's not the same, but it uses similar vocabulary. So let's take a look at the conditions that we have. Dehydration, a stroke, obesity, infection, and allergy. Now listen to the first doctor's recommendation. So number 1. I believe that the inflammation is caused by a bacterium, not a virus. So I will prescribe a course of antibiotics. Take your time to read the recommendation once again. Pause the video if you need more time. And the condition is an infection. So a person is suffering from an infection. A key word that hints to it is an inflammation, right? Inflammation is a condition when a part of a body becomes red or sore or swollen, right? Mainly due to an infection or an injury. We don't have any conditions related with the injury, so we know that the doctor is talking about an infection. An infection, of course, can be bacterial or viral. This is another clue that we have in this recommendation. All other conditions cannot be caused neither by a bacterium nor by a virus. Now let's listen to the next recommendation. Recommendation number 2. I would suggest you reduce your energy intake by 600 calories a day and exercise for at least 60 minutes a day. I have referred you to a local active healthcare center where you can exercise under the supervision of a qualified trainer. You'll get another appointment in 4 weeks' time and we will see how you are getting on. Now, once again, pause the video if you need extra time to think. Here we have several clues again, which help us to understand what the condition is. First of all, we have you need to reduce your calorie intake or your energy intake by 600 calories a day. So intake is the amount of food, drink, or anything that you take into your body, right? So the condition that the doctor is talking about is obesity. Obesity is a condition or a state of being extremely overweight in a way that is dangerous to your health. So obesity. And this was the recommendation for obesity, or for an obese patient. An obese patient suffering from obesity. Now, recommendation number 3. You seem to have developed hypersensitivity to pollen. I will prescribe antihistamines for symptomatic relief. I would also suggest immunotherapy to address the cause of your hay fever. Now pause the video if you need extra time to think. And here we have a very good clue: hay fever. Hay fever is a condition which affects your eyes, your nose, your ears, your throat, and it's usually a result of an allergic reaction to pollen in the air. So this is how we know that the doctor is giving a recommendation to a patient suffering from allergen. You also have here for antihistamines, which of course are used for allergies, but even if you don't know that, hay fever is the vocabulary which you should be able to recognize. Hay fever, right? Or you can also understand hypersensitivity to pollen, and hypersensitivity is usually connected with allergic reactions. It's another synonym to an allergic reaction: hypersensitivity to something. Hypersensitivity to peanuts also I've seen in several reading passages used on IELTS. Hypersensitivity to foods, hypersensitivity to peanuts, very common word which you can come across in the reading and listening sections of IELTS. So now let's move on to the next recommendation, and I think it's already number 4. So recommendation number 4, right? The recovery process is different for different people. It may take weeks, months, or even years. Some patients recover fully, while others have long-term or lifelong disability. But I believe that you will make great progress in regaining your independence. For now, I have referred you to physiotherapy and have prescribed you medications to prevent further occurrence. Again, pause the video if you need extra time, or if you want to reread the recommendation to understand what condition the doctor means. And the correct answer is a stroke. And a stroke is the most serious condition that we have on this list. It's usually a situation in which the blood supply changes suddenly. The blood supply to the brain changes suddenly, and as a result, a person can lose an ability to use a certain part of the body. This is the only condition that we have on the list which may have long-term or lifelong consequences and lead to disability. Right? So these are all the clues that you get from the recommendation. And the last recommendation that we have in this task. I believe that you have been feeling dizzy because you haven't been taking in enough fluids. You really need to drink at least a liter of water a day. Now pause the video if you need more time to think, but the only condition that we have left from the box is dehydration. And the words that you need to remember here is, of course, dehydration itself, and then to take in, right? You need to take in fluids, you need to take in water, you need to take in at least a liter of water a day, and to feel dizzy, right? When you feel unsteady, when you feel like everything around you is moving when in fact it is not. So these are the words that you need to know to score band 7 on IELTS. Now let's move on to the next task number 4. In this task, you need to find an option, A or B, that best paraphrases the sentence that you have in the task. For example, task number 1. We had to make last-minute changes to our itinerary. What does it mean? Option A. We had to make changes to our journey at the last minute. Or option B. We had to receive new documents for our trip at the last minute. Now pause the video if you need extra time to think. And here, the word that you need to know to choose the correct answer is itinerary. Very frequently used word that you need to know. An itinerary is the plan for your trip. This is usually if you go to a travel agency, they make an itinerary for you. They take the time to develop your itinerary. They book the transport and prepare your itinerary. So we had to make some last minute changes to our itinerary, means the same as we had to make some last minute changes to our journey or to our travel plan. Sometimes if you hear or see the word to alter, which is very frequently used on IELTS, it means the same as the verb to change. So for example, I can say, we had to make some last minute changes to our travel plan, or I can say we had to alter our travel plan at the last minute. To alter. Now let's move on to sentence number 2. Learning to swim is a real challenge. Does it mean the same as A, learning to swim is a lot of fun, or the same as B, learning to swim is really difficult? Pause the video if you need more time, and a challenge refers to something which is difficult to do or to achieve. It is a very frequently used word, and we commonly use it in such phrases as to rise to a challenge or to face a challenge. For example, this is the biggest challenge that scientists face nowadays. Or, I know that this job is very difficult, but I am sure she will rise to the challenge, meaning that I'm sure she will meet all the demands of the job, even though it is a really difficult or challenging job to do. Now, sentence number 3. We had some strange encounters during our trip. What does it mean? Encounters. Option A. We met some strange people during our trip. Or we traveled across some strange and unusual landscape during our trip. Pause the video if you need extra time to think. And an encounter refers to a meeting especially one which is accidental. For example, I had an alarming encounter with a wild pig once in my life. I didn't expect that at all. It was unexpected meeting. I just came across this wild pig. The same here. We had some unusual or strange encounters during our trip means that we came across some very strange or unusual people during our trip, and that definitely was not planned. It was an accidental meeting. We just came across them. Now, sentence number 4. Traveling to Japan was a valuable experience. Valuable experience. What does it mean? Option A. Traveling to Japan was very expensive. Option B. Traveling to Japan was worthwhile. Again, pause the video if you need extra time to think, and the correct answer is worthwhile is a synonym to valuable. So the option B is the correct option. Worthwhile. If something is worthwhile, it is worth doing it. For example, high prices in the UK make it worthwhile for potential property buyers to look abroad. Right? Worthwhile. Valuable. Valuable is also a very high frequency word. Valuable experience, valuable information, valuable support are all very common collocations. Also, a valuable addition to a team. For example, I believe he will make a valuable addition to the team since he has a very rich experience in the field. And the last sentence in this task, quitting my job was a pivotal decision. Pivotal decision. Option A. My life changed after I quit my job. Or, it was my private decision to quit my job. Pause the video if you need more time. And pivotal refers to something important because it leads to some other changes. Other things depend on it. Right? So quitting my job was a pivotal decision means that my life changed after I made this decision. Now, the last task number 5, is the most challenging task. The vocabulary that you will come across in this task is frequently used on the reading as well as listening parts of the exam. You will hear a description of an object, and then you will choose what object is being described from 3 options given. So object number 1. This object is a container which is about 9 centimeters in height and has a diameter of about 7 centimeters across the top. Is it a wine bottle? Is it a cup or is it a kettle? Now pause the video if you need extra time. And the correct answer should be it's a cup. Right? Pay attention here that in English we use in diameter. For example, it is 9 centimeters in diameter. The same, it is 9 centimeters in height. Right? Across the top, across the bottom. Diameter across the top, diameter across the bottom. Now, object number 2. This is a very small but very useful object. It's about 4 centimeters in length and about 1 millimeter in width. What is it? A. Is it a nail file? B. Is it a memory stick? C. Is it a watch? Pause the video if you need extra time. And now remember, so 4 centimeters in length, and 1 millimeter in width. So it's very, very thin. Definitely it's not a watch, and definitely it's not a nail file, because a nail file is longer than 4 centimeters. So the only option that we have is a memory stick. Of course, memory sticks can be bigger than that. Maybe they can even be smaller than that, but this is the option that we need here. Now we have only 2 objects left. So this object is about 1 meter in length and can be adjusted to fit most adults of almost any size. What is it? A. A belt. B. A glove. C. An umbrella. Now pause the video if you need extra time to think. And the correct answer is a belt, right? A belt is definitely adjustable, right? You can adjust it to fit any person or almost any adult of any size. And also another clue that we have is that it's 1 meter in length. Again, remember, in length, in width, right? In width, in length, in height, in diameter. And the last description that we have. This object is of variable length, and can be used to suspend something from a height or to secure a parcel. What is it? Is it a piece of string, a pair of scissors, or a length of wood? And the correct answer is a piece of string. The words that you need to know here is definitely a rope, a parcel or a package, right? To secure is to fasten, right? To make it secure so that it doesn't open, to secure. And to suspend, also high frequency word on IELTS, to suspend, to make it hang from the top, to suspend from the height so that it's hanging on a rope, right? Now, this is the end of this section of the test. For other sections, please check the description box below. If you were able to answer most of the questions correctly and you are familiar with most of the vocabulary used in this section of the test, chances are you will be able to score Band 7 and Band 7.5 without much difficulties on the reading and the listening parts of the exam. If you are familiar with only 50% of the words covered in this section of the test, you do need to make some efforts to enrich your vocabulary, to increase your vocabulary. Also remember that the words that we used in task 1, task 2, as well as task 4 of this section of the test are also the words that you need to be able to use actively in your speech and in your writing. And IELTS is designed in a way that will require you to use these words, and especially if you want to show a wide range of vocabulary, especially C1 vocabulary, you do need to use them. Again, remember, perseverance is the key to your IELTS success, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.